There are moments in history when a single human being quietly alters the trajectory of civilization, not with armies or revolutions, but with the disciplined calibration of his own character. Imagine a young Benjamin Franklin standing alone in a dimly lit Philadelphia attic, a thin candle trembling beside a worn wooden desk. Outside, the colonial night groans with the weight of distant storms. The city is poor, the streets are rough, and America itself is nothing more than an uncertain dream whispered between flickering tavern lamps. Yet here, in this narrow room where ink stains and paper scraps gather like fallen feathers, a transformation is beginning. Franklin bends over his notebook, drawing the first lines of the ledger that would define his life. 12 virtues, 12 unyielding mirrors for the soul, each page a battlefield, each checkmark a small rebellion against the forces that pull a human being toward mediocrity. He was not rich. He was not powerful. He was not the Franklin who would negotiate with kings or shape constitutions. He was simply a young man who refused to drift. He believed that character was not inherited, but engineered, that the mind could be sharpened like a quill, that habits could be arranged like typeset blocks until they formed a new identity. And through the quiet alchemy of daily self-examination, a printer's apprentice became one of the first self-made millionaires in the new world. What lies ahead in this journey is not a story of money, but a story of becoming. If you feel a stirring to reclaim your life, to rebuild your discipline, to understand the hidden machinery of wealth and virtue, then settle in with me by this fire. If this speaks to you, consider liking the video, subscribing to Echoes of Wealth, or supporting the channel so this work can continue. The story begins in the quiet countryside of 18th century England, where a man named John Harrison hunches over a workbench illuminated only by the wan light of a single lantern. The rhythmic tick of a half-finished clock fills the air, a sound both comforting and maddening in its insistence. Outside, the North Sea churns beneath storm-heavy skies, waves slapping against ships that cannot yet know the longitude that will save them. Harrison, a carpenter with no university degree, is attempting what the world has deemed impossible: to create a clock so precise that it can measure time accurately at sea, to determine a ship's east-west position with absolute certainty. For years, kings and navigators mocked him. Royal commissions were denied. Critics sneered at a mere craftsman who dared to challenge mathematics, astronomy, and tradition simultaneously. Yet Harrison persisted, bending metals, polishing gears, and calibrating escapements with a patience bordering on obsession. His workshop became a cathedral of concentration. Every hour, every tick, every oscillation was recorded with meticulous care, as though the universe itself demanded proof of his discipline. He was not just building a clock, he was engineering his own mind, cultivating focus and fortitude with each precise movement of his hands. And here lies the secret Harrison understood intuitively. Mastery of time is mastery of destiny. Every human life is a series of compounding moments, and the failure to govern them is a slow, imperceptible erosion of opportunity. His clocks, once dismissed as curiosities, would eventually save lives and earn him fame and fortune. But the real lesson was never in the mechanics. It was in the mental rigor required to create something impervious to chaos. In our own lives, Harrison's obsession translates into the cultivation of personal and financial discipline. The hours we track, the habits we perfect, the routines we never compromise, these are the gears of our own wealth. Wealth does not appear in sudden windfalls. It emerges from the patient, relentless measurement of time, attention, and effort. As Harrison's clocks measured longitude with unwavering precision, so too can we measure our days, ensuring that each tick builds toward mastery, each routine compounds toward success, and each decision aligns with the trajectory we wish to claim. Harrison's obsession was not born from vanity or greed. It emerged from necessity, the same necessity that confronts anyone seeking to shape their life deliberately. He understood something the world around him did not. Time, once lost, can never be regained, and yet it can be structured, measured, and made to serve as the most faithful servant of human ambition. In his cramped workshop, Harrison would lay out each gear, each spring, as if arranging pieces of a philosophical puzzle, each one a meditation on precision and patience. There were moments when frustration threatened to undo him, years of failure, broken prototypes, and mockery. But Harrison treated each setback not as a defeat, but as a calibration, a step toward eventual mastery. The storms of the North Sea, the unpredictable winds and waves that had destroyed so many ships, became a metaphor for the chaos inherent in human life. Harrison could not control the sea, but he could control the way time itself was captured, measured, and used. And in that act of control, he found freedom, the freedom to create certainty where others saw only uncertainty. He refined not only his clocks, but his mind, training it to see patterns, anticipate errors, and make decisions rooted in rigorous discipline rather than chance. For us, the lesson extends beyond horology. Think of your day as a ship navigating the uncharted waters of modern life. Each moment is a tick of your personal clock. How will you measure it? Will you allow your attention to drift aimlessly, tossed by distraction and impulse, or will you structure your hours, account for your choices, and cultivate the habits that compound invisibly over time? The financial equivalent is equally precise. Just as Harrison's clocks converted motion into certainty, consistent daily actions, saving, investing, learning, building relationships, compound steadily, creating security and growth that cannot be achieved through fleeting luck or sudden schemes. Harrison's life whispers a truth too often ignored. Wealth is the accumulation of disciplined seconds, minutes, and hours. It is the invisible arithmetic of attention and effort, made tangible over years through relentless consistency. The more precise your inner clock, the more your life aligns with purpose, and the more inevitable the compounding of success. By the time Harrison's H4 marine chronometer finally sailed across the Atlantic with impeccable accuracy, the world had witnessed the quiet power of persistent, methodical effort. Critics who once laughed at the carpenter now stood in awe, offering rewards that had seemed impossible decades earlier. Yet Harrison's greatest victory was not the prize or recognition. It was the mastery of a single, immutable principle. Control your time, and you control the outcomes of your life. Consider his process, the clock's pendulum, swinging with relentless consistency, became a meditation on patience. The tiny imperfections in each gear, each spring, were identified, analyzed, and corrected with painstaking care. He understood that even the smallest variance, if unaccounted for, could disrupt the entire system, a lesson equally applicable to human behavior and financial habits. Every wasted hour, every neglected routine, every impulsive decision has a ripple effect, compounding unseen, often destructive, over years. Harrison's genius was in recognizing that wealth, whether measured in money, mastery, or meaning, was the inevitable byproduct of meticulous attention to these small, daily increments. In practical terms, we can emulate Harrison by structuring our own chronometers of life. Track your hours like investments. Audit your attention as you would a balance sheet. Build routines that reinforce long-term growth rather than short-term gratification. Compound learning, habit, and action relentlessly, just as Harrison compounded seconds into hours, hours into days, and days into a legacy. Financially, the principle is identical. Consistent investing, reinvesting, and disciplined saving are the invisible gears driving exponential growth. Each dollar, each habit, each decision is a tiny mechanism in the machinery of your personal fortune. Harrison's story is a whisper across centuries, reminding us that mastery is not a result of genius alone, nor is wealth the product of chance. It is the quiet arithmetic of precision, patience, and purpose. To measure and govern time is to harness the invisible forces of compounding, crafting not only clocks, but lives that withstand the storms of circumstance, emerging exact, calibrated, and resilient. In the misted mountains of 17th century Japan, a solitary figure moves through the early dawn. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary swordsman, is not yet a myth. He is a man whose name will echo for centuries, not because he spoke with eloquence, but because he understood the profound power of restraint. He has faced enemies countless times on blood-soaked fields, emerging undefeated, yet it is not his victories in battle that define him here. It is the silence he cultivates in the spaces between. After decades of wandering as a ronin, dueling in villages, and surviving the chaos of a fractured Japan, Musashi retreats to a small cave, perched above a river where mist dances like fleeting spirits. The outside world hums with gossip, politics, and fleeting ambition. But within the cave, he charts a different course. There are no battles here, only reflection. No words are wasted, no actions taken without full presence. He writes the Dokodo, The Way of Walking Alone, a manifesto of detachment, discipline, and precision. Each precept is distilled from a life lived in constant confrontation with chaos, teaching the art of self-governance in the face of distraction and desire. Silence becomes more than absence of speech. It becomes an active force. Musashi understands that energy leaks through thoughtless conversation, hasty action, and indulgent distraction. Just as water seeps from a vessel, attention dissipates when unguarded. Every word, every gesture, every thought must be deliberate, honed, and conserved. The disciplined mind, like a sharpened blade, cuts through illusion and waste. In our lives, this principle translates into the careful management of attention and focus. The world offers an endless deluge of noise, social media, urgent demands, ephemeral trends, and those who fail to govern their energy scatter it across distractions that yield no lasting value. Financially, The lesson is profound. Just as Musashi conserved energy for the decisive strike, we must conserve resources, time, money, focus for high-leverage opportunities. Avoiding impulsive spending, resisting the siren calls of hype markets, and filtering information carefully compounds advantage over a lifetime. The quiet, deliberate investor often outperforms the loudest, most reactive one, not through genius, but through mastery of restraint. Musashi's days in that cave are rhythm and ritual. He wakes before dawn, listening to the river's current and the wind through the pine needles, attuning himself to subtle shifts in nature, as if preparing his mind to detect imperceptible movements in life itself. He sharpens his swords with methodical care, practices strokes endlessly, and journals reflections that are more meditations than instructions. There are no superfluous motions, no idle chatter, only the disciplined economy of thought and action. It is said that visitors seeking his guidance often left frustrated, unable to penetrate the depths of his silence. Words, he teaches, are like currency. Spend them without consideration, and you bankrupt yourself of attention. Actions are capital. Invest them with care, and their returns can be extraordinary. Musashi's philosophy is an early lesson in cognitive and emotional accounting. Every distraction, every impulsive reaction, every wasted minute diminishes the reservoir of your potential. Conversely, discipline preserves it, allowing it to compound in subtle but inexorable ways over years. For those seeking wealth or mastery, the implications are striking. Silence is not merely abstention from speech, it is the cultivation of a concentrated mind, a bank of potential energy that can be deployed at the precise moment of maximum effect. Financially, it mirrors the principle of selective ignorance. Knowing what to ignore is as critical as knowing what to pursue. Markets, trends, and opinions teem with noise. The undisciplined react to every signal, scattering their attention and capital. The disciplined, like Musashi, conserve, observe, and strike decisively, allowing compound advantage to accrue silently over time. Even today, in the hum of modern distraction, the lesson resonates. Mastery of skill, of wealth, of life is less about relentless action than about strategic restraint. Musashi's silence is a treasury, storing unseen energy until the moment when it can yield maximum impact. It is a reminder that the loudest voices seldom win, and that true power often grows quietly, beneath the surface, unnoticed, yet unstoppable. In the sunlit corridors of Renaissance Florence, a young Leonardo da Vinci bends over a canvas, his brush hovering uncertainly, eyes scanning not only the figure before him, but the invisible laws of light, anatomy, and movement that govern the world. He has been commissioned to paint the baptism of Christ, yet the divine proportions of his imagination clash with the limitations of his materials, his pigments, and even his own hand. In these early hours, the studio is silent except for the faint scratching of brushes against wood, a rhythm that echoes the heartbeat of creation itself. Leonardo is not yet the legend. He is a man at the intersection of curiosity, obsession, and relentless self-critique. Every sketch, every unfinished painting, every meticulously annotated codex reveals a mind incapable of complacency. Leonardo studies the flight of birds to understand aerodynamics. He dissects corpses to map the hidden machinery of muscles and sinews. He records everything in countless notebooks, the pages dense with observations, theories, and inventions. Some entries are technical, others verge on mystical. His Codex Atlanticus is a labyrinth of ideas, sprawling across centuries in imagination, as if Leonardo is simultaneously living in the present, anticipating the future, and conversing with the past. The myth of Leonardo is often reduced to his masterpieces, yet it is in the revisions, the failures, the endless iterations that his genius is truly visible. He abandoned works he considered imperfect. He returned to projects decades later, reimagining composition, experimenting with perspective, and adjusting light. The Virgin of the Rocks exists in two versions because Leonardo could not accept the first as complete. He understood that creation is never instantaneous, but iterative, a constant dialogue between observation, experimentation, and refinement. Spiritually, this teaches an essential law. The pursuit of mastery requires humility in the face of one's own limitations. Progress is nonlinear, and perfection is not a destination, but a continuous process. Each failure is a feedback loop, each revision a step toward alignment with the invisible laws of excellence. Leonardo embodies the principle that true growth comes from embracing imperfection as a necessary companion to insight. In financial life, Leonardo's iterative genius translates directly into strategy. Wealth and skill compound not through singular, brilliant strokes, but through repeated adjustment, learning from errors, and recalibrating methods over time. Investors who treat their portfolios as living systems, evaluating performance, refining allocations, learning from mistakes, reap benefits that are invisible in the short term but exponential across decades. Just as Leonardo's final masterpieces emerge from countless sketches and failed attempts, long-term financial success emerges from patient, iterative actions and disciplined refinement. By the time Leonardo begins his work on The Last Supper, the artist is no longer merely a student of nature. He has become a philosopher of form, a scientist of the human condition. The refectory of Santa Maria delle Grazie echoes with the faint scratch of brushes and the smell of wet plaster. Leonardo studies not only the figures, but the spaces between them, the shadows that fall across drapery, the subtle gestures that betray emotion. Every detail is observed, calculated, and reworked. When the apostle's expressions do not convey the precise intensity of betrayal and loyalty, Leonardo paints over, adjusts, and refines, often returning months later to adjust shadows or angles with microscopic precision. The myth of the solitary genius is seductive, yet Leonardo's life teaches something more profound. Mastery is iterative, cumulative, and often invisible. He keeps thousands of notebooks, many never published, filled with sketches of flying machines, anatomical diagrams, and theoretical inventions. He pursues ideas decades ahead of his time, often abandoning them because materials or techniques are insufficient. Some of these sketches were rediscovered centuries later, revealing the breadth of his vision and the relentless pursuit of perfection that defined his existence. Leonardo treats life itself as a laboratory, experimenting, observing, and recording, knowing that each iteration brings him closer to understanding the immutable laws behind nature's beauty. Spiritually, the law becomes clear. Wisdom and skill are accrued through persistent refinement, not fleeting inspiration. Growth requires the patience to revisit failures, the courage to abandon the unfinished, and the humility to learn from what the world may not yet understand. Leonardo's notebooks are a testament to this philosophy, a mirror reflecting the value of deliberate, iterative effort over instant recognition. Financially, this iterative principle is transformative. Like Leonardo refining each sketch, an investor or entrepreneur must refine strategies over time. Portfolio adjustments, reinvestments, learning from errors, and incremental optimization compound into results far beyond initial expectations. The mistakes are as instructive as the successes. Each revision compounds into knowledge and capital. Wealth, like art, is rarely created in a single stroke. Instead, it emerges quietly, invisibly, through the repeated discipline of reflection, adjustment, and action. As Leonardo ages, his genius becomes less about the final product and more about the process itself. In the final years of his life in Amboise, France, he is often seen wandering along the banks of the Loire, notebook in hand, sketching plants, water currents, and even the flight of insects. To the casual observer, these may appear as idle musings, yet for Leonardo, every observation is a data point, a small experiment in understanding the invisible architecture of reality. His mind is an endless workshop, one where failure is a necessary instrument and curiosity is both the forge and the fire. This relentless iteration reflects a profound spiritual principle. Life is an unfolding experiment. Each choice, each attempt, each revision is a brushstroke on the canvas of one's character. Perfection is never attained, but direction, intention, and refinement form the invisible scaffolding that allows brilliance to emerge. Leonardo's life reminds us that waiting for perfect conditions or instantaneous results is futile. Action combined with persistent reflection, learning, and adaptation is the only path to enduring mastery. Financially, the lesson is strikingly similar. Long-term wealth is rarely the result of a single brilliant investment or a moment of inspired risk. It is the product of iterative compounding, learning from small missteps, adjusting allocations, testing strategies, and consistently refining methods over decades. Just as Leonardo returned to paintings decades after beginning them, the disciplined investor revisits strategies, improving with each cycle. Mistakes are recalibrations, setbacks are data points, and patient, persistent refinement compounds into significant advantage. In essence, Leonardo's life embodies a golden truth. Mastery, whether of art, life, or finance, emerges not from brilliance alone, but from the disciplined, iterative cultivation of skill, observation, and reflection. Each day is an opportunity to revise, each failure a lesson, and each adjustment a step toward compounding excellence that, over time, becomes unstoppable. In the year 1325, a young Moroccan named Ibn Battuta departs from Tangier, leaving behind the familiar streets, the scent of spices, and the protective walls of home. He is 21, armed with curiosity, faith, and a small sum of coin. What begins as a pilgrimage to Mecca quickly expands into a journey that will span over 30 years, carrying him across deserts, mountains, and seas, through the courts of sultans, the tents of nomads, and the bustling markets of lands most Europeans would never dream of seeing. From the islands of the Maldives to the courts of Delhi, from Anatolia to the sands of Mali, he encounters cultures, economies, and philosophies that challenge everything he knows. The myth of Ibn Battuta is often told as a story of wanderlust, yet beneath the romance lies a deeper truth. His wealth was not measured in gold or titles, but in knowledge, connections, and the ability to navigate complexity. Every encounter was an investment of attention, every risk taken a lesson in strategy and survival. He records languages, customs, and governance with meticulous care, creating a vast ledger of human experience. By the time he returns to Morocco, he is not only a traveler, but a walking archive, a man whose personal capital far exceeds the material riches he may have carried. Spiritually, Ibn Battuta embodies the law of expanded horizons. The mind and soul grow only when exposed to the unfamiliar. Confinement, whether physical, social, or mental, limits opportunity and diminishes potential. Growth comes from venturing into territories unknown, observing deeply, and absorbing insights that expand perception beyond inherited assumptions. The invisible law here is clear. Your wealth, influence, and wisdom are proportional to the breadth of your experience. Financially, Ibn Battuta's journey translates into a principle of compounding exposure. Wealth is rarely created in isolation. The investor who reads widely, travels, explores industries, and cultivates diverse networks accrues information, opportunity, and advantage that compound over a lifetime. Much like Ibn Battuta's meticulous journals, which became a treasure trove of insight, modern knowledge, strategic, disciplined, and diverse, serves as the foundation for sustainable, long-term financial growth. Exposure multiplies opportunity, just as his journeys multiplied understanding. As Ibn Battuta ventures further from home, he learns lessons no classroom could ever teach. In the markets of Cairo, he studies the ebb and flow of trade, noticing how merchants leverage trust, reputation, and timing to secure profit. In the courts of Delhi, he observes how influence is cultivated through subtle gestures, alliances, and the patient accumulation of social capital. In the deserts of Central Asia, he learns resilience, the ability to endure scarcity, to anticipate hazards, and to adapt to conditions beyond one's control. Each step, each interaction, each misadventure is carefully recorded, a transaction in knowledge that will compound in unseen ways. The myth of Ibn Battuta is not merely a story of wanderlust, it is a story of deliberate accumulation. While others may seek immediate gain or local prestige, he understands the power of exposure over impulse. He treats every conversation, every negotiation, every observation as an opportunity to invest in understanding, and this investment grows silently over decades. Spiritually, the lesson mirrors the principle of cognitive compounding. The mind, like a portfolio, expands exponentially when nourished with diverse experiences. Exposure to new ideas, cultures, and perspectives cultivates creativity, adaptability, and foresight, qualities essential to both personal mastery and enduring wealth. Financially, the parallels are striking. Just as Ibn Battuta amassed wisdom that could later be leveraged in multiple contexts, a modern investor, entrepreneur, or professional benefits enormously from broad exposure. traveling to new markets, learning new skills, engaging with different industries. All these actions create optionality. Knowledge is capital, networks are assets, and adaptability is the yield on compounded experience. Those who confine themselves to a single viewpoint, a single market, or a single methodology risk stagnation, while those who diversify their intellectual and practical exposure create durable advantage over a lifetime. Even more profoundly, Ibn Battuta's journeys reveal that wealth is not merely the accumulation of tangible resources, but of insight and perspective. The true fortune lies in seeing what others cannot, in navigating complexity with agility, and in transforming experiences into actionable understanding. The Merchant of Distant Horizons demonstrates that the richest lives are those whose minds travel further than their feet, whose networks span continents, and whose curiosity compounds silently, patiently, relentlessly. By the time Ibn Battuta returns to Morocco, more than 30 years after his departure, he carries with him the accumulated wealth of a lifetime, not in coins or jewels, but in understanding, influence, and insight. His Rila, the chronicle of his travels, becomes a map of human knowledge, a guide to social structures, commerce, culture, and the subtleties of diplomacy. Every sultan he visited, every caravan he joined, every marketplace he observed is recorded with meticulous care, creating a compounding repository of wisdom that continues to influence scholars, travelers, and leaders centuries later. The spiritual lesson is unmistakable. Expanding one's horizons is a form of compounding virtue. The more one experiences, observes, and reflects, the more one's judgment and intuition grow. The invisible law is simple, yet profound. Knowledge and exposure amplify opportunity. Just as Ibn Battuta's network of contacts and insights grew silently over decades, so too does the human mind expand when nurtured with diverse, meaningful experiences. Those who confine themselves to familiar routines or narrow perspectives limit their potential, while those who venture into the unknown cultivate exponential advantage. In financial terms, this is the principle of strategic optionality. Every new skill learned, every relationship nurtured, every market studied functions like a small deposit in a long-term portfolio. Over time, these deposits compound, creating opportunities that are invisible to those who focus solely on immediate gains. A single encounter in a distant city may translate into a strategic partnership decades later, just as an observation of trade practices in Cairo can inform investment strategies across continents. The key is patient, deliberate engagement, treating every experience as an asset that accrues value silently and persistently. Ibn Battuta's journey teaches that wealth is inseparable from the scope of one's vision and the depth of one's engagement with the world. True fortune is the product of curiosity applied with discipline, of attention invested in learning, and of the courage to explore beyond familiar boundaries. The Merchant of Distant Horizons reminds us that the richest lives are not necessarily the ones with the most gold, but the ones with the broadest map of human experience and the foresight to compound it over a lifetime. In the bustling streets of 4th century Alexandria, the scent of papyrus and incense hangs thick in the humid air. Scrolls piled high in the library whisper the secrets of the ancients, each fragment of knowledge a spark awaiting ignition. Among these treasures walks Hypatia, philosopher, mathematician, and astronomer, a woman whose intellect shines with a light few dare approach. She teaches, writes, and debates, yet her brilliance is matched by a steadfast discipline that governs both mind and body. Her life is a ledger of thought, meticulously curated, her attention guarded like the most precious flame. Hypatia's daily routines are rigorous. She rises before dawn to study celestial movements, lecture attentive students, and correspond with scholars across the Mediterranean. Even amidst the political turbulence of Alexandria, her focus is unbroken. She refuses to let the chaos of mob rule, religious conflict, or civic unrest penetrate the sanctity of her reasoning. Her philosophy is simple yet profound. The mind must be disciplined as a sacred temple. Thoughts, like coins, are finite resources. Squander them carelessly, and the intellect becomes impoverished. The myth of Hypatia is often told tragically, highlighting her violent death at the hands of a frenzied mob. But beyond the brutality lies the deeper lesson. Knowledge, discipline, and clarity are treasures more enduring than gold or life itself. She preserved the wisdom of generations, maintained the rigor of mathematical precision, and cultivated an intellectual purity that became her true inheritance. Spiritually, Hypatia embodies the law of mental hygiene. The focus of attention, like a flame, must be nurtured and protected. The distractions, fears, and temptations of life are relentless. Mastery comes to those who guard their consciousness with deliberate care. The invisible principle is clear. What we allow into the mind compounds in influence, shaping decisions, character, and destiny. Financially, the translation is direct and modern. The disciplined management of information, attention, and mental energy is as crucial as capital in a portfolio. Just as Hypatia filtered knowledge to cultivate clarity, the wise investor filters information, avoids noise, and focuses only on what truly matters. Protecting mental bandwidth is akin to safeguarding financial capital. Every choice compounds over time, and the ability to concentrate on high-leverage opportunities becomes a decisive advantage. Hypatia's classroom is not merely a place of learning, it is a sanctuary of precision and clarity. Students come from across the Mediterranean, drawn by her reputation for insight and rigor, but her teaching is exacting. She challenges assumptions, dissects arguments, and demands exactitude. Even the brightest minds must organize their thoughts with care, measure their reasoning against logic, and cultivate the patience to follow ideas to their conclusion. To think haphazardly, she understands, is to court disaster, whether in mathematics, philosophy, or life itself. Her life is a demonstration of the spiritual principle that every mental input compounds invisibly over time. Exposure to chaos, frivolity, or distraction dilutes judgment, just as neglect corrodes a fine instrument. Hypatia's discipline is both proactive and defensive. She seeks knowledge actively while protecting her mind against the corrosive effects of rumor, fear, and emotional turbulence. The invisible law she embodies is that purity of thought is the precursor to wisdom, and wisdom is the precursor to sound action. In the realm of finance, this principle is mirrored in the careful management of information and decision-making. Investors and entrepreneurs who allow their attention to be dominated by every headline, trend, or fleeting opinion risk dissipating their capital and judgment. Instead, the discipline of filtering inputs, focusing on high-quality data, and maintaining clarity in thinking allows decisions to compound into tangible advantage. Each strategic insight, each measured choice, accumulates silently, building the foundations of enduring wealth. Hypatia's life also teaches the importance of long-term perspective. Just as she preserved and transmitted ancient knowledge despite the turbulence surrounding her, today's practitioner of wealth cultivates patience, resists impulsive reactions, and invests consistently in systems that grow over decades. The disciplined mind, much like the disciplined investor, sees beyond immediate chaos to the invisible patterns that determine lasting success. Hypatia's final years are marked by both reverence and peril. The political and religious currents of Alexandria grow violent, yet she remains steadfast, continuing her teaching, writing, and guidance of scholars. She navigates treacherous circumstances not through avoidance, but through unwavering focus on her work and principles. Her legacy is not merely the knowledge she imparted, but the discipline she exemplified. A mind cultivated with care, resistant to corruption, and oriented toward clarity and understanding. Spiritually, Hypatia's life is a testament to the power of mental compounding. Every thought nurtured, every lesson absorbed, every moment of reflection strengthens the intellectual and moral structure of the individual. The invisible accrual of wisdom, attention, and discernment mirrors the financial principle of compound interest. Small, consistent investments of effort in the right areas create exponential returns over time. Just as Hypatia's influence rippled across centuries, so too does disciplined thought produce outcomes far beyond the immediate moment. In practical terms, modern wealth creation mirrors her approach. The disciplined management of attention, information, and decision-making serves as capital. Habits like journaling, reflecting, strategic learning, and careful evaluation of opportunities compound quietly, shaping judgment and character in ways that become visible only after years of consistency. Noise and distraction erode potential just as much as poor investment decisions, while focus and deliberate action compound advantage, creating resilience, insight, and long-term success. Hypatia's story is a reminder that true wealth is inseparable from clarity of mind. Gold, property, or status are ephemeral. Only the disciplined intellect and cultivated judgment endure, yielding influence, insight, and prosperity that outlast circumstances and lifetimes. Her life whispers across centuries. Guard your mind as your most precious asset, invest attention with purpose, and let the compounding of wisdom guide every action, thought, and decision. In the quiet halls of the monastery of Jarrow, in the early 8th century, a young monk named Bede rises before dawn. The air is cold and still, carrying the faint scent of burning tallow from the chapel candles. Outside, the Northumbrian sky stretches gray and endless, but inside, the rhythm of the monastery sets the cadence of his life. Each day is a careful orchestration of prayer, study, and labor, punctuated by the tolling of bells that mark the sacred hours. Bede's work is meticulous. With a reed pen and sheets of vellum, he charts the movements of the sun and moon, records the chronology of saints, and constructs tables that will allow future generations to calculate the date of Easter with unerring precision. His ecclesiastical history of the English people will become a cornerstone of knowledge, but it is not the fame he seeks. His devotion lies in the act itself, the quiet, repeated labor that transforms scattered observation into order. Each stroke of ink is deliberate, each calculation carefully checked. The myth of Bede is subtle. There are no dramatic duels, no sprawling travels, no fortune amassed in gold. His battles are against error, inconsistency, and ignorance. Spiritually, he exemplifies the principle of sacred routine. The discipline of daily practice compounds into mastery and legacy. The invisible law he lives by is simple, yet profound. Repetition, patience, and order create structures that outlast the individual. Financially, Bede's approach offers a clear lesson. Just as he organized time and observation into systems that yielded long-term clarity, modern wealth is built on the compounding power of disciplined routines. Daily audits of spending, regular investments, consistent learning, and incremental improvements in skill are the modern equivalent of Bede's sacred charts. While the world chases excitement or novelty, those who establish routines harness the quiet power of consistency, allowing small efforts to accumulate into extraordinary advantage. Bede's days follow a rhythm that is both strict and expansive. Morning prayers awaken the mind to focus, while hours spent copying manuscripts strengthen both hand and concentration. In the scriptorium, he records not only ecclesiastical events, but astronomical observations, noting the movement of the heavens with painstaking accuracy. Each observation is checked against the last. Every calculation is repeated to confirm its truth. Through this disciplined repetition, he transforms fleeting, ephemeral moments into enduring knowledge, building a foundation upon which future generations will rely. The monk's life exemplifies the spiritual principle of compounding effort. Small, consistent actions, repeated with devotion, accumulate into monumental outcomes. Bede understood that mastery is not born in a moment of inspiration, but in the quiet devotion of daily practice. The invisible law he embodies is that structure, whether in thought, habit, or observation, magnifies the impact of each effort over time. Repetition is not mere routine, it is the mechanism through which potential becomes realized. Financially, Bede's approach mirrors modern wealth creation through systematic routines. Consider the disciplined investor or entrepreneur who automates savings, journals insights, revises strategies, and engages in continuous learning. Each small, consistent action compounds silently, producing returns that are invisible in the moment but extraordinary across years. Just as Bede's carefully calculated tables allowed future generations to track time and celestial events accurately, disciplined financial systems transform modest, repeated actions into substantial, long-term advantage. Moreover, Bede's meticulous approach teaches the importance of patience and humility. True compounding requires time and a willingness to defer immediate gratification. Just as a single miscalculation could disrupt his chronologies, errors in financial planning, habit formation, or skill development compound negatively if unchecked. The lesson is clear: systems, structure, and sacred routines protect against drift, ensuring that small, consistent actions align with larger goals over a lifetime. In the final years of his life, Bede's work reaches its culmination. The tables he has compiled, The histories he has recorded, and the astronomical observations he has painstakingly verified become a coherent, interwoven system of knowledge. His ecclesiastical history of the English people preserves the memory of generations, while his computational methods allow the faithful to observe celestial order for centuries to come. What sets Bede apart is not merely his intellect, but his devotion to the daily, disciplined practice that transforms ephemeral moments into enduring legacy. Spiritually, Bede demonstrates that greatness is built not through flash or drama, but through consistency and the sanctity of routine. Each day's effort, no matter how small, compounds invisibly into results far exceeding the sum of individual actions. The law of sacred routine is evident. Disciplined structure allows both mind and work to accumulate in a way that withstands time, chaos, and unpredictability. Life, like the heavens he mapped, is governed by patterns. Mastery emerges from aligning oneself with these patterns through repeated, mindful practice. Financially, the lesson resonates clearly. Systems, whether for investing, learning, or habit formation, produce compounding returns over time. Automating savings, tracking expenses, maintaining routines of continuous improvement, and regularly revisiting strategies ensure that the invisible forces of accumulation work in one's favor. Bede's meticulous daily discipline is the blueprint. Structured effort repeated consistently produces results far beyond what sporadic brilliance or impulsive action can achieve. Bede reminds us that wealth, mastery, and legacy are inseparable from the cultivation of disciplined routines. Each moment invested wisely compounds silently, and each consistent action builds the framework upon which extraordinary achievement rests. In a world enamored with shortcuts, Bede's life whispers an enduring truth. It is the patient, deliberate rhythm of daily effort that creates results which endure, just as his sacred charts mapped the stars for generations to follow. In the labyrinthine canals of 16th-century Venice, the island of Murano glows at night with the reflection of molten glass. Smoke curls from countless furnaces, and the air is thick with heat and the scent of sand transformed into crystal. Here, behind high walls and under strict guild control, a secretive society of artisans practices a craft that has been honed for generations. Among them is Pietro Baroviere, a master glassmaker whose hands are as precise as a surgeon's, shaping liquid fire into delicate vases, intricate chandeliers, and mirrors that reflect more than mere appearances. They reflect the soul of an age. The myth of Murano's glassmakers is one of secrecy and obsession. To protect their craft, laws forbade them from leaving the island, ensuring that the knowledge of formulas, techniques, and methods remained tightly guarded. The glassmaker's life is one of rigorous devotion. Every day begins before dawn. Every batch of molten sand is carefully measured, and every movement of the hand is deliberate, rehearsed, and executed with exacting precision. Mistakes are costly, not merely in material, but in reputation. Perfection is demanded, not for vanity, but for survival and the perpetuation of legacy. Spiritually, the Murano artisans embody the law of obsessive mastery. Total devotion to craft transforms the practitioner, shaping character, discipline, and perception. The invisible principle is that obsession, channeled correctly, is a multiplier of skill. Small, Repeated actions performed with absolute focus accumulate into expertise so profound that it becomes nearly untouchable, creating advantage that cannot be replicated by those unwilling to commit fully. Financially, this principle translates to the power of high-leverage skills. Mastery in any field, whether art, business, or trade, compounds advantage over time. A single artisan who dedicates decades to perfecting their craft outpaces dozens of generalists who skim the surface. In modern terms, developing rare, high-value skills creates opportunities that grow exponentially, much like the refined glass that commands extraordinary value far beyond the raw sand from which it is made. The Murano glassmaker's life teaches that wealth is inseparable from the pursuit of excellence, precision, and relentless dedication. Pietro Baraviere's days are measured in temperature, timing, and touch. Each furnace holds its secrets. Each batch of sand demands patience and exactitude. He knows that a single misstep, a second too long at the fire, a slight miscalculation in cooling can shatter hours, even days, of meticulous labor. Yet within this peril lies opportunity. Those who commit fully to the process, who embrace the discipline required, produce objects of unmatched beauty and value. Craft and risk are inseparable. Mastery demands both. The spiritual lesson is profound. Obsession, when disciplined, is not a vice, but a conduit for transformation. Focused, repeated effort cultivates patience, resilience, and clarity. The invisible law is that attention invested with intensity multiplies its impact over time. Each deliberate movement, each thoughtful repetition, compounds into skill so refined that the craftsman transcends ordinary limitations. In Murano, the air itself seems to hum with accumulated human effort, a tangible testament to the power of disciplined obsession. Financially, this translates into the modern pursuit of leverage through mastery. A skill developed with rigor, rare, high demand, and difficult to replicate, becomes a compounding asset. Experts command not only respect, but premium returns for their work. Investors and entrepreneurs can apply the same principle. Dedicating time to mastering one area of expertise allows opportunities to multiply quietly, while generalists, spread thin, rarely achieve comparable results. Like the molten glass transformed under Baraviere's hands, focused effort becomes a tangible, high-value outcome that endures and accumulates worth over decades. Moreover, the Murano Guild's secrecy illustrates another key lesson: protection of intellectual property, skills, and processes is crucial. Knowledge left unguarded is diluted, while carefully curated expertise compounds into advantage. In both craft and finance, strategic management of assets, whether tangible or intellectual, ensures that compounded effort yields maximum reward over time. As Baraviere's reputation spreads, his works become symbols of both beauty and scarcity. Collectors, nobles, and merchants seek the delicate chandeliers, goblets, and mirrors only he can produce. Each piece carries not only material value, but the weight of decades of discipline, focus, and cumulative skill. Yet Baraviere does not work for fame or profit alone. He is devoted to the perfection of his craft, understanding that wealth is a byproduct of mastery, not its primary objective. Spiritually, the life of the Murano glassmaker illustrates that obsession. When channeled with purpose, compounds unseen advantages over time. Talent is multiplied through discipline, effort, and repetition. What may appear as simple skill to the untrained eye is actually the accumulation of countless deliberate choices, corrected errors, and refinements performed over years. The invisible law is that the human mind and hand, when disciplined and focused, become engines of exponential impact, producing outcomes far beyond what could be achieved with raw energy alone. Financially, Barovier's path teaches a critical principle. The highest value is created when skill, consistency, and exclusivity converge. Modern entrepreneurs and investors who cultivate deep, specialized expertise, protect their intellectual capital, and pursue disciplined, patient growth achieve compounding advantage that generalists rarely attain. Just as a single pane of Murano glass may take days to produce but retains immense value for centuries, skills honed with care yield returns that continue to grow long after the initial effort. Ultimately, the Venetian glassmaker reminds us that true wealth is inseparable from mastery. Excellence cannot be rushed. It requires devotion, precision, and patience. The compounding of skill, like the compounding of financial capital, rewards those who persist, refine, and protect their craft. In Barovier's furnaces, molten sand becomes timeless glass. In our lives, disciplined attention, cultivated expertise, and patience become enduring wealth. Benjamin Franklin, in the quiet twilight of his life, sits at a polished wooden desk. The room is lined with books, papers, and the faint aroma of ink. Outside, Philadelphia hums with the bustle of commerce, politics, and human ambition. Franklin does not write of fortunes amassed, nor of political triumphs, though both have touched his life. He writes instead in the ledger that has accompanied him for decades, a meticulous record of virtues observed, failures noted, and self-improvements pursued. Each checkmark is a small testimony to a life deliberately measured, each blank space a reminder of opportunity yet to be seized. The myth of Franklin is often told as the story of a self-made millionaire, yet his true mastery lies in the invisible system of self-accounting that made wealth, influence, and wisdom inevitable. By observing his character daily, tracking habits, and measuring progress with honesty, he transformed fleeting actions into enduring outcomes. Virtue, diligence, patience, and reflection compounded over decades, producing a legacy far beyond gold or property, a life aligned, a mind disciplined, and a framework for others to emulate. Spiritually, the lesson is clear. Your life is a ledger. Each thought, habit, and decision writes an entry that compounds silently into character, influence, and destiny. The invisible law of compounding applies not only to money, but to attention, virtue, and integrity. Consistency and reflection amplify over time, building results and wisdom that outlast circumstances, fortune, or even mortality. Financially, this principle manifests in the routines and systems we create. Savings, investments, skill building, and learning compound like interest in a well-tended account. Each disciplined choice, each act of delayed gratification, each moment spent refining knowledge or character contributes to wealth that grows quietly but inexorably. The ledger is both metaphor and mechanism. Track, measure, and act deliberately, and the returns, financial, personal, and spiritual, become inevitable. In the end, Franklin's life whispers a timeless truth. Fortune follows virtue, wealth follows mastery, and the ledger we keep, whether in ink or in habit, outlives the individual, becoming a map for generations to navigate the invisible architecture of success. Lie back and allow your body to sink into the rhythm of the night. Feel the gentle pull of gravity as it cradles you, the quiet pulse of your own breath, the slow unfolding of your mind into calm. With each exhale, release the tension of the day. With each inhale, draw in clarity, focus, and the patient energy of the universe. You are safe. You are still. You are ready to absorb the principles that have guided the lives of masters for centuries. In this space, imagine the 12 virtues of Franklin as rays of light, each touching a part of your mind, a part of your daily practice. Begin with temperance. Allow moderation to guide your choices. Let silence settle your thoughts, conserving energy for what matters most. Invite order to structure your hours and attention. Let resolution strengthen your commitment to goals, and allow frugality to remind you that every resource, whether time, money, or energy, is sacred. With each slow repetition, affirm the power of industry, knowing that persistent effort compounds into extraordinary outcomes. Embrace sincerity, letting honesty guide decisions in both personal and financial life. Invoke justice, balancing fairness with strategic clarity. Moderation of appetites sharpens the mind. Cleanliness fosters clarity of thought. Tranquility sustains calm amidst chaos. And chastity, understood broadly as disciplined focus, protects your attention for what truly matters. Visualize these 12 rays permeating every aspect of your being. With every breath, imagine them embedding themselves in your subconscious. Each repetition deepens your alignment, turning awareness into habit, observation into mastery, and intention into compound action. Let the rhythm of your mind echo Franklin's disciplined ledger, allowing virtues to accumulate silently, influencing choices, decisions, and actions over years and decades. Financial wisdom, like these affirmations, is most powerful when internalized. Your subconscious mind, absorbing these principles, begins to guide behavior automatically. Deliberate choices, patient growth, measured risk, and disciplined attention compound quietly, yet relentlessly. The night is a vessel. Your mind, a ledger. Each breath writes entries that will flourish while you sleep. Remain here, in this calm repetition. Let the principles settle. Let them compound. Let the wisdom of Franklin, Musashi, Leonardo, Ibn Battuta, Hypatia, Bede, and Barovier take root in your being. With each slow, deliberate breath, the invisible forces of habit, discipline, and virtue grow stronger. Your mind, body, and life are aligning with the architecture of long-term mastery and wealth. Sleep now, knowing that every repetition, every reflection, and every act of disciplined practice is compounding quietly in the background. You are safe. You are still. You are becoming.